So this is a joke video, people. I hate that I have to say it on joke videos, but otherwise people get mad at me. They come yell at me in the comments, I can't believe that you think that. Have we all forgotten what professional wrestling is meant to be, your fantasy book, and you come up with crazy times? I mean, of course I'm a moron. Look at me. Let's say that when AEW does start in 2019, it does run into a little bit of bother, and Vince McMahon walks up with his weird arm walks that he does, and he goes, hey pal, I'm gonna buy your company. And he actually takes it over. So let's start with the Elite for obvious reasons. As we remember, the Young Bucks kind of descended into megalomania as they got cracked in their own heads, whereas Hangman Adam Page became the anxious millennial cowboy. And that character especially was so damn good for 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, because it really had depths and layer to it. Like an onion. You do have to ask the question though whether the Hangman would be able to get over these emotions to eventually win the AEW World Championship from Kenny Omega. And don't forget, around this time too we were pushing Luchasaurus, and John Moxley and Eddie Kingston had that wonderful bromance. But as soon as McMahon arrives, no see ya, it's time for sports entertainment. And the first thing to happen is that the Jacksons would be told, you now get no say in your creative endeavors because I'm Vince McMahon and everybody listens to me. Don't think he wiggles his finger like this. Somebody like Jungle Boy then would have actually just become a feral child, who probably not able to speak or something, and Luchasaurus would have been a literal dinosaur. I mean, he wouldn't speak either, and he probably misses his friends and family, and he's all like, whoa, before Jungle Boy gives him the voice box, and he tells Luchasaurus that's how he should speak, and he's like, I can't believe humans kill my people. I mean, you laugh, but that's kind of what we did a long old time ago. We also remember when Moxley and Omega clashed in 2019 in that absolutely brutal match that ended with them going through a glass table. Well, you can get rid of that too. Instead, we are going to use kendo sticks. Lots and lots of kendo sticks that for some reason are under the ring. And why? I don't know. That's just where they live. Ow. Let's keep ping-ponging around as well, because do not forget, at the start, Britt Baker was meant to be our babyface of the women's division, and very smartly when that didn't work, we turned her heel. But we know what Vince does when he's decided somebody has to be a good guy. You do not change for anything. So even if she walks out there and everyone's going, boo, boo, I'm not saying boo earns, you ignore that and you continue to push her and you shove it down people's throats. Actually, that wouldn't happen, and what would happen is that we would double down on the dentist stuff, and before long, she'd be coming out with a drill, she'd be coming out going, oh my gosh, I'm gonna charge you a lot of money, and she would do a lot of things with teeth. I mean, that's why Isaac Yankem existed all those years ago, because Vince McMahon decided, well, pal, no one's ever done a wrestling dentist. I'm like, yeah, there's probably a reason why. Excalibur would also be instructed to tell you about her job every few seconds. Be like, oh man, she's using her dental skills there. And you can forget about that music, you get rid of that, and instead it would just be which is my impression of a dentist drill. Going back to the Hangman 2, as I've already told you, you can get rid of all this nuance crap, and instead it would just be, well, you're a cowboy, so you have to go out there and smile a lot, you're going to ride a horse, and every now you gotta go, woohoo, ride 'em, cowboy. Because again, you're a cowboy, don't forget you're a cowboy. He'd also be beaten down by the heels every single week with no friends, and not even a hint of getting back up to the top. When it comes to MJF, that's an interesting one. I would be intrigued to know what Vince McMahon thinks. I actually think that one day he may go to WWE and be a massive success, but in this fantasy land we've built, there is no AEW versus WWE, because Vince McMahon bought All Elite Wrestling, and if we use the history to determine the future, do you really think that Vincent Kennedy McMahon isn't going to be like, well, he's not very tall? Of course he is. He has done that so many times, and every time it's been a massive mistake. I mean, this is a guy who called Chad Gable Shorty G, which sounded like a biscuit, even though there were people in the promotion shorter than him, don't get me started. So basically, Maxwell would be made the new Hunter Hearst Helmsley. He'd have that really posh, and that scarf, man, he would be wearing it all of the damn time, even when he was wrestling. It's kind of questionable whether he would have made it to the top. Which also ties into who McMahon would choose as his big star. Because you can't really say Cody Rhodes, because that's the reason that Cody left WWE to begin with, because Vince was all like, oh man, you gotta be Stardust, pal. So if all of a sudden he bought All Elite Wrestling, I don't think he'd do a 180, and in fact, just to be a massive dick, he'd probably make Cody Stardust again. I mean, it is one of the worst ideas in hindsight, because if WWE had just listened to Rhodes, they could have saved themselves a lot of bother, which of course is when it's time to reel in Wardlow. Because you can absolutely see Vince being high on him, But we've already established what would happen here. He would just be pushed and pushed and pushed, and even when it didn't start working, he would be pushed and pushed and pushed, and eventually people would be sick of it and I don't want to see this anymore. Please give us something else, as they take their palm and smush it into their face. I mean, something like Boo-Lo would become a thing on social media, and then we've all got to be sad again. I'm not even going to get into what he may have done with the Japanese women division, and if you want to know why, just go and Google Jim Ross, Vince McMahon, and some of the comments apparently Vince made to good old JR about these individuals. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting and it should never be said again. You also have to talk about Darby Allin, because that is an interesting one, because on the one hand, he could be a Jeff Hardy type, and Jeff did very well in WWE, but on the other, well, again, one of these guys that Vince McMahon probably wouldn't understand at all. I mean, Allen has even said he's never going to sign with WWE because he knows within a few weeks he'd be that weird guy sitting in a boiler room just going, yeah, he's 100% right. Which brings us to one of my favorite wrestlers, Orange Cassidy. My word. Now, if there is any truth behind the idea that McMahon knows nothing about wrestlers that WWE may sign that have a buzz, what would he make of this? I don't care where your allegiances lie. I will bet my entire head of hair that within about 3 seconds, Vince would have gone, it's called Orange Cassidy, is he? Well, we're going to turn him into an actual piece of fruit. I mean, it would have been, his name was Orange, let's get him a suit, and you just know he would have won matches by squirting juice into people's faces. And yes, that sounds disgusting. Poor Cassidy eventually would just have to be rolling around everywhere too, because again, he's an orange, and an orange is circular. While I'm laughing, deep down in here, my tum-tum, I know it to be true. I mean, even Jim Ross and Chris Jericho said the first time they saw this gimmick, they didn't really get it until they were like, right, now I understand it. But Vince McMahon wouldn't let it get that far, and before you know it, he'd be in a tag team with an apple. You'd have Orange and Apple, and then they'd call them, wait, I can't handle it. You also probably wouldn't get any partnership with New Japan Pro Wrestling, because WWE has been trying that for years and it never works. Which brings us to the one and only Eddie Kingston. Oh no. Now, Eddie is one of the major success stories of the last few years. He is a proper underdog with bags of talent that doesn't see it in himself, who finally made it to the big time, and he took his ball, totally smashed it. But McMahon would just see another indie guy, probably ignore the fact that he's amazing when a microphone is in his hand, and just make him a worker that turns up here and there and probably always loses. So you would never get to feel the emotion that he does have. It's not a world that I want to live in. Going back to JR as well, he'd absolutely be kicked off the commentary team because Vince McMahon loves doing that, and he'd probably be put in some silly angle. Don't even get me started about the House of Black. I mean, they would be shooting lightning from their hands and coming back from the dead. Look, I like a little bit of hocus pocus in my wrestling. Sometimes people do go just a little bit too far. Let us make sure we put some positivity into this video too, because I am a positive peak, because Vince McMahon would absolutely salivate over Powerhouse Will Hobbs. When it comes to Kenny Omega, I totally believe it doesn't matter what company you put him in, he's always going to thrive. It would be the same with the Young Bucks, to be honest, because they just understand wrestling to the nth degree. And the only worry for Matt and Nick Jackson would be the weird way that McMahon sees tag team wrestling. I mean, it's out there, he doesn't really like it. Moxley would also be an intriguing case, because of course he left WWE, where he did get somewhat of a push, but that actually all ties in. Vinnie Mac would remember this and be like, oh man, no, it's time to punish you. And he'd probably get murked like Jeff Jarrett did in the late 90s. Chris Jericho would also still be a prominent player, but as Jericho himself said, McMahon only ever saw him at a level, so he probably would be pushed down a little bit. And can you imagine if CM Punk had joined before this fictional WWE buyout? I mean, I don't even want to think about it. You like chaos and carnage? That was gibberish. If you like chaos and carnage, I can't even speak about it because it gives me the fear. Now, of course, I do want to point out that at the moment, WWE creative is actually great and I look forward to it every single week. But you can't get away from the fact that Vince McMahon has done this a lot, and that very sadly, even now, when he does see the AEW roster, he's probably all like, oh man, I could beat all of them up. It's totally ridiculous and misses the point. There's a bunch of other individuals we could talk about as well, like Chris Statlander, for example. She would never have been allowed to have left that alien gimmick alone. I quite like that, so maybe we should go back to it, but I tell you, we should all count our lucky stars that this probably never will happen, because it would be an absolute dumpster fire. So secretly I want it, because I've told you before, I just want to watch the world burn. Now look, like I say, there are a bunch of other wrestlers that we should get into, so make sure you do that in the comments below and let me know what Vince McMahon would do to your favourite character. Like the video, share the video and subscribe, and click one of the videos on the screen right now. It will be another why video. Also, please do go to whatculture.com where you can keep up to date with the latest news. And if WWE does buy AEW, we'll tell you. My gosh, we'll tell you. And you can come tell me I'm an idiot on Twitter at Simon316 or Instagram. And it's the same with What Culture at What Culture WWE. Once again, I just want to double down. We're just having some fun. I want all wrestling companies to flourish because I'm not a psychopath. Only weirdos want companies to die. But I still agree with half the things that I said. Half of them were jokes. Goodbye.